Part 2. Hey guys, this is Roy back again from leedskalnins workshop. Today we're going to learn about some of the lessons or some of the trivials that I've learned while working on this wheel. Goods, bads, and shelf items, meaning knowledge is put aside. You might need it later on. Back to this guy right here. So when this relay that I made, well actually my buddy sent me this, Scott, shout out to Scott, did some alterations to it, and bam, here we go. So basically when that relay hits and releases, this field magnet activates and pulls. When this second relay, let's get it to unsnap, and that second relay and pull comes into play. There it is. When it comes into play, it activates that one, and pretty much pick up my phone here. I just dropped on the floor. It pretty much activates this one, and then you have every time this south pole, and this is south, right? Every time this south has a north pole in front of it, I'm going to show you what happens here. So basically we can take, I have it set up here to where this north is approaching the south. And do I have it set up? No, I don't. I don't. Anyway. So when this south activates and hits this north, what it does is it puts a pressure, like, look, let's look at, one thing I want you guys to do is look at magnets as tension. And what a magnet really brings to the table is some kind of tension. Because when this magnet comes across this magnet, you'll see, watch that magnet turn, okay? Now that magnet there is representing a wheel. You see I got little marks on it, right? So basically it has its own tension. And when you turn it, it will spring back to its place. So even if it lost its place, it'll find its place back in, because it has to abide by some rules, some laws. So with that being said, I started investigating around the wheel, and what I've come across in certain things is that there's a, thinking of magnetism as tension, the spring-like effect on the inside here drives the energy inward, so this becomes a pole in itself. And we're going to check it, and it's a south pole. So that's south pole. Over here we have north pole at the centers, okay, at the neutrals, and we have south in the middle. Okay, so this apparatus has already divided itself, okay? So because I got the magnets all isolated from this top ring, and there's another ring below it down here in the bottom ring, the magnets are isolated. Another thing that I'm going to bring to your attention is if you look at the magnets now, they're 5 high, and pretty much now they're fully charged. And instead of having keepers along the front of each individual one, because that's what I used to do, now that I realize the strength is really, because they're stacked, is at the bottom at the top. So this here has Superman strength now, trying to pull it up, and so does the bottom. So now what we actually really created was a loop. So right now this loop of strong condensed at the end of each one of these prong ends, where the strongest is looping this way, okay? And then now you look at each individual magnet, and it's looping like this. So basically, you're coming out of here, coming in. Look at this is a coil, that's a coil. And these permanent magnets are circulating permanently all the time. And every time they're depleted, if they're depleted in the right manner, like how I do here, is every time the south hits the north, that's how I charge these magnets. So basically, this is recharging this magnet every time it comes across here. Now, I don't want this south to go off on a south, because what's going to happen is it's going to now reverse the poles permanently inside that magnet. Then every time this magnet turns around, if I'm using it for other purposes like coils on top and bottom, or whatever I'm doing, it's going to be thrown off a little bit. One little bad cog in this whole big array of a big sprocket. So it's very important to build this. The hours I got into it and the time it takes to really plot and plan on this wheel. I am into leedskalnin for about, I'd say, since '88, but really only got into them to really study about them for 2.5 years, 3 years now. What's fascinating is there's been people out there who come across things, discovered things, and bring light to Ed's situation down in Homestead. But until people try stuff and really prove anything, all they really have is their version. So I don't really have a version. I have the wheel. Now, if I was building this wheel to just be a timer to work a relay, then it wouldn't be 24 poles, it would be 16 poles. Because it's smaller wheel, it turns easier, and it's easy just to pulse it across, and it'd be used for that purpose for a relay. But this one's different. This one has 24 poles. Now, if you take the 24 poles on just alone on Ed Spider Huff, the electrical engineer, chief electrical engineer for Henry Ford, on their system that they were charging their batteries on their Model T Fords in 1908, 09, they had 16 of these. And they turned in a circle, and they put a coil on the top, and the coil, a little round coil, and they used Tesla's flat iron copper, like a pancake coil, and they connected them all together. And there was just one, and every time this came by that round coil, little round coil, it broke the magnetic field and put a charge through there. Do you know that system made 30 volts? That was 16. So it took a motor to turn against it in so many RPMs. I get that. So that's where some of your things come into play on doing the math on how many revolutions it'll take to get that 30. But here, not using it like it was originally designed, because I have a good feeling, just based on the time frame back in the 30s, that Ed Huff, Spider Huff, and Ed leedskalnin knew each other. Ed Huff retired in Homestead, Florida, and based back on that time, I think the neighbors all knew each other. They all knew whatever, who was doing what. They knew each other. So I'm pretty sure that the electrical engineer, which is miraculous in himself on the things that he accomplished on the Model T Ford, I mean, they had it turning. There's a picture out there on the prototype of the 16 pole, and they use brass and they separate it all, and these are all like half moon shapes on the end for the round coils. There's brass ring going around. They put some time in. When they were spun over so many RPMs, they said that the car felt like it was lifting off the ground a little bit. So just think about that repulsion going around and around. You know, you sort of create this magnetic force that's way beyond our normal visual and stuff like that. Back to this here. So back to leedskalnin. Here you got the wheel. I figured out how to pulse it so I can get it turning. We are going to incorporate radiant energy. And there's one more topic that I want to cover with you guys that pretty much I'm going to read a little bit off of some of my paperwork here. One thing I want you to look at here is this here is, let me see if I can get this right so you can get the visual. This here is not McDonald's, but it's a V-shaped magnet, just like on my wheel here, okay? So it's the same shape. Now, when you rotate this wheel this way, it creates, if you have a cog, say just that wheel itself right there, that little magnet, it turns the same way here that I'm showing you guys. That one thing great about these magnets, they will all follow each other. So if you use them and think of them as a spring, they will spring into action and bounce back to where they were and follow that law continuously. So if you think about magnetic and electricity, you can incorporate all three of those things: tension, electricity, radiant electricity, cold electricity I'm talking about, and I'm talking about magnetism. So you got this wheel here. If you push the wheel this way, it shows you over here which way the cog is going to turn. And then if you push the wheel that way, you'll see which way the cog is going to turn. And this is very important too. When you go to design a system like this part here represents my V-shaped magnet here with my coil on it. So, you know, knowing what pole to put down here to push this cog. So if I want this leg really to come in this way, I want to turn the cog, so this part here has to be pushing so it turns in coordinates with that arrow. And also the same thing over here. There's a lot going on here trying to put this system together, guys. I want you to understand there's a lot of hours and work going into here. So one thing I want to cover with you guys, and it's probably going to excite some of you guys, but it's based on a double helix theory of a magnetic field. And what we're going to talk about briefly is the electrostatic and magnetic attraction that arises from an ether tension along the lines of force that connect directly between unlike charges or unlike poles. In an electrostatic case, the attractive force should obey the inverse square law. In the case of the magnetic attraction, we don't have spherical symmetry, and the inverse square law will only arise on a microscopic level between electrons and positrons along a double helix lines of force. And that's one of the things I wanted to cover with you guys with coming out of the capacitor in a dielectric realm. Pretty much starts applying what I'm talking about is your ether that's in space and how it works in our environment with gravity involved. Now, one thing I want to talk about is orbital stability and magnetic levitation, because this is the kind of the things that I'm into. The attraction of why Ed's wheel covers the majority part of my life.